As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing light facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self-doubt in order to regain self-confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experiences, and trauma. Today, I will have Kelly Harris as our guest, and she's the owner of Harris Virtual Solutions. She's a copywriter and marketing strategist who helps you build relationships through consistency and visibility. Kelly helps mission-driven entrepreneurs leverage relationship marketing and strategic copywriting so that they can increase their impact and profits. Kelly believes in building relationships and creating experiences for her clients. Connect with Kelly and she will help you articulate your greatness, increase your sales, and get your message to the world. So I'm so excited to have you here. And I know we were chatting before the podcast, and you said some incredible things that I would like to bring to the forefront of the podcast. And it was your experience with your parents, like you said, that they had a fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I want for you to expand on that because I see and feel like you have this entrepreneurial free spirit gene and living with a fixed mindset of parents, and that is your environment, right? So can you tell us how that affected your psyche, and then how you made either when you received the awareness and when you made the choice to make a change?
So like you said, I grew up in a very fixed mindset house, and the fact that skills were praised and they were very, oh, you did great, but why can't you do a little bit better? My parents had a plan for me and my siblings, probably from the day we were born, like, you're going to go to school, you're going to get married, you're going to go to college, you're going to, have a white blue collar job, and then you're going to have the little house with the picket fence, and someday you'll retire, and then when you do, then you can do what you want to do. And so I grew up in that house, and nothing against my parents. I had a really good childhood. None of the trauma was necessarily like physical, but I do think that we all get trauma, whether we realize it or not, with our experiences. And for us, the trauma kind of came in with, they wanted us to be super successful.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say things like, oh, cool, you made a 91. Why wasn't it 100? What could you do better? And I think that their thought process was like, hey, if we keep pushing, they'll be like, oh, we should do better next time. And, it's just a couple more points. And the message that my siblings and I received, honestly, was that it was never going to be good enough. And I don't know that I even realized that, because, my dad wanted me to be a graphic designer. So in high school, I went to the VOTEC to do that. He wanted me to be the designer in college. So he paid for college, and that's what I went and did until I didn't get into the program. And then, I got married, which I don't think would have been his choice necessarily. And then I went back a year later and went to school to be a teacher. And that's what I did for 10 years. And, honestly, I loved being a teacher, but I always tell people it was the parents, the politics, and the paperwork that I had always said there's a 10-year hard stop. And then when the pandemic hit, I went from working 60 hours a week to about 85. Just because of the parameters that the school district that I was at put in place. And my husband said, this isn't sustainable. And we always said 10 years. So hard stop at in May, figure out what the next step is. And so I decided I'm going to try something different. Like what I've always done, what I've been told is what I'm supposed to be doing isn't working. And I don't like it. And I'm stressed all the time. And I don't want to be like, what if I can do anything? What do I want to do? And so I became a virtual assistant and then later pivoted into copywriting and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I mean, my business will be 2 years old in December. And my dad still asks me, like, when are you going to go back to teaching? And I'm like, I'm not in the capacity that that he has in his mind, because that's what his version of success looks like. And because of that, he has no idea what my version of success looks like. And there's just, I'm the baby. So my parents were born in the 50s. So there's majorly a generational disconnect
Mm-hmm.
in what they had and what opportunities they had available to them versus the opportunities that computers have given us.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't understand. And, I kind of had to come to terms with that too. Like, cool, I'm going to go do something that no one is going to understand. And I knew that I was going to, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, but I don't actually know what I'm supposed to go do. Like, I've got the what. Now, how do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so the very first thing that I did was I hired a mindset coach. Even before I actually quit teaching, because I was like, I know that there are some problems. I can't identify them, but I know I'm going to need support. And after working with her is when I kind of had to really start to reflect on, like, where are these feelings coming from? Where are these thoughts that I've always had? Where did they come from? Like, how did I end up getting them programmed? Like, why am I feeling like I'm not enough when I go out to work on something? Or why am I having questions of worthiness or feeling not confident in this? And a lot of it came back to being raised in a fixed mindset house, because it wasn't like they don't look for opportunities because they don't see them. And so really just saying, cool, I'm going to make a deliberate attempt to have a growth mindset and to work on this every single day and to really have an abundance mindset. And it's a process. Some days are better than others. But also, like, that, like, a lot of the things that I was taught are essentially generational trauma. It are things that my parents passed down to us because that was what was passed down to them. And so I made a deliberate decision that wasn't what I wanted to pass down. And it's been super interesting too, because when I decided we're going to try this and we're going to make it work, like, it's not if it works, if it doesn't work, I'll go back to teaching. It was, we're going to make this work. It may not look like what I thought it was going to look like. And you know what? That's okay. So instead of thinking of what if as a bad thing, I'm going to say, what if this works? What are the impact that I can create? And when I started my business, my 12-year-old started wearing suits to school because he said, Mom, I'm going to be a business owner just like you. And, he was fortunate enough early in his educational career that we ended up at a school that was very growth mindset oriented and that was teaching kids how to think, how to use the power of yet. And they were things that I didn't know. Like, even as an adult, like, I was the teacher in the school and I didn't know. And so what essentially happened was, before I started my business, I knew what to say to fake a growth mindset. Because I was still very much in that fixed mindset. Like, this is what I know and have known for 35 years. But what you say is intriguing. Tell me a little bit more. But it had to be a deliberate, conscious thought to say, how do I look for those opportunities? Because in the world that I came from, those opportunities didn't exist.
Right. And I love what you said. I take notes because I'm a note taker. And you said that you were raised in a fixed mindset, and that doesn't allow you to look for opportunity. What would you attribute your innateness of either knowing for going for those opportunities, like how, if for someone that's coming from that trauma fixed mindset of parents, what would be an acknowledgement or an awareness of getting out of that? Because you had an innate knowing somehow, because you from yourself were able to get a mindset coach. So that was a knowing to shift something. But someone that
I think
doesn't know,
if you don't know, I think, like you said, awareness is the first step. And so what the thing that kind of caused that knowing for me was slowing down and asking myself, instead of just being an autopilot like so many people are, because
mm,
we are the human mind is essentially that 70 to 90,000 thoughts in a day, and 80% to 90% of those are automatic things. They're habits that we don't even consciously have to think about. And so taking the time to slow down and
mhm,
say, why am I having this thought? Like that's an like even saying, oh, that was an interesting thought. I wonder where it came from. And taking that pause, because what I found was the
I love that.
more I did that,
Hmm.
the more I could actually start to trace where these things were coming from. Like, oh, I'm not feeling like I'm enough. Now why? Oh, well, it's because I was always told, how could you do better? It wasn't, you did great. And maybe they said that, but that wasn't the message that we received.
Hmm.
It wasn't even, and I think too, some of it was, I tell my own children, we do what's called a stop, start, continue, or sometimes they'll call it a roses, thorns, and rosebuds. But
Hmm.
essentially, like, cool, we just did something. What were two things we should start doing? What are two
Hmm.
things we need to stop doing or change? And then
Hmm.
what are two things that we need to continue doing? And then by doing that, it ends on the positive.
Hmm.
And so it kind of it lessens the impact of that negative thing that you have to have. It takes the emotion out of it and it makes it more of a constructive feedback as opposed to, cool, you're not enough. Because
Hmm.
that's not enough information to say, oh, okay, well, how do I be enough? Like, what am I supposed to be doing that is enoughness?
Hmm.
So it kind of took the action steps out of it. So by taking the time to really reflect and say, like, where are these thoughts coming from? And how do I break that cycle? So when I start to have these thoughts, maybe I say out loud, stop, because that changes the thought that I've always just let run on autoplay in
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
background.
Hmm. I love that. And you were mentioning about slowing down. How would you define balance?
For me, balance, because I wear so many different hats, and I know a lot of mamas do. They're the cook, they're the cleaner, they may have a business, maybe they're the PTO mom, the scout mom, the whatever.
Hmm.
Um, Balance is, a lot of people want to say, oh, 50% to this one thing, or 50% to this, or we're going to give 30% to everything. But it looks good on paper, but that's
Hmm.
about where that stops. Balance for me is like, cool, today we might have to spend more time with the family and not as much on business, because that's what needs to happen. And then maybe next week the business needs a little bit more love, or maybe, we're going camping with the scouts. So maybe some focus needs to go over there. And it's more a game of like, where does the attention need to be right in this moment? And not saying 100% attention to one thing, but you can say, like, I can put the business on the back burner for the weekend while we go somewhere. Or, my middle child is autistic. So last year, a lot more focus went on to family, because it was like, we have these doctor's appointments, we have these people that we have to talk to, because we need to figure out what is going on. How can we help him be successful? And so, what I have kind of found too is like, things happen for a reason. And so last year was the first year that I was 100% entrepreneur CEO, but that opened the door to me to be able to take more time with my son, because it's
Hmm.
like, cool, I can take my computer and I can still work when I'm sitting in the doctor's office and they're playing games or whatever, evaluating him.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so being just really open to, I'm not gonna to putting some white space in, I think, as well. Like maybe I just need some time to reflect. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's balance to me. Is
Mm-hmm.
is just figuring out what needs my attention and being okay with it. I do yoga and meditation from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the people I listen to talks a lot about equanimity. And equanimity is being okay with how things look and how things,
Mm-hmm.
the sounds in the background, the cars driving by, the whatever. Because we live in a society that pushes Pinterest mom and perfection,
Mm-hmm.
and perfect doesn't exist. So, what you look for is, how can I create those moments in pockets, because that's what the kids are going to remember. And how can I show up in a way that is still 100% me, not who
Mm-hmm.
you expect me to be, but the person that I actually am. Because, and this took me a long time to figure out, but it's way less work to show up as the authentic you wherever you go than it is to be like, cool, I'm with these people, I have to act this way. I'm with those people, I have to act that way. And we do that because we want to
Mm-hmm.
fit in. And yet, there's almost this like fakeness that comes because you end up being all of these characters, and that's where people lose themselves.
Yes, and that's a good point about what you just said about moms can lose themselves, right? And I know when I'm working with my clients, a lot of it is being okay where your emotions are at. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can check in with your emotions, you can find a balance and you can find where the attention needs to go, like you mentioned. And all
Right.
that comes into play with you being authentic as a mother, that it's okay if you feel maybe a little off today and you need, okay, you put something in the back burner, but you give attention to whatever else would need like a priority, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
doing everything. And I think that's where moms become overwhelmed.
Right. And what I found, this has been kind of an interesting journey of itself. I honestly, when I started my business, didn't really know who I was, because
Hmm.
it was like I go to work for 60 hours a week, and I'm Kelly the kindergarten teacher, and there are certain expectations that I've been told that I have to act in that space.
Hmm.
And then I go to scouts, and there are certain expectations there. And it was like, cool. So who is Kelly?
Hmm.
And what
Yes.
is the impact that she's actually supposed to be making, but she's getting bogged down by all this other stuff?
Yes, absolutely. And I believe too, like what you said about, having like a fake mindset or a fake um, way of having to deal with things. And I don't necessarily think people or moms are trying to be fake. It could be where they're trying to keep up.
It's a survival technique,
Yes,
because I
that.
didn't even realize I was doing it until I had a mindset coach say, cool,
Yes.
you told me the right things, but I can look at your face and say that you don't actually believe that. And I'm like, what do you mean? Of course I do. Because then I was super indignant because, she pretty much called me out. And she's like, yeah, how much you going to make in the next couple of years? I'm like, 100,000. She's like, yeah, if you can't say it without stuttering, like, you probably don't believe that on the inside. And
Mm.
it took me to be like, well, what, like, could she be right? And being
Hmm.
open to this, like, instead of just being defensive. I read somewhere yesterday, or I was actually at a conference yesterday, and they were talking about how when we get information, when we communicate, most people everybody has they will do one of three things. And they will take it in and say, yes, I completely agree with you. Or they will
Hmm.
do what's called blend it, and they'll say, like, I'm not sure I completely agree, but I have this other information and experiences I've had. So, okay, like, tell me a little bit more. Or they'll
Mm.
defend it and say, like, no, I'm not. That's not, I don't agree with what you said. And what's interesting is that we are programmed to defend it. 90% of what people tell
Mm.
us, we're going to defend it because it doesn't fit into our upbringing, our ideologies, all of that. And so, you know, being aware of that makes it a lot easier to communicate with people.
Yes, absolutely. because like you said, they're going to defend it, like, and the coach. So that was a good coach that she brought it to your awareness, and that is her
Mhm.
job to do that. And
Mhm.
but if you are aware that it can be a space where, so an understanding of where they're at with their mindset.
Mhm. And what I kind of learned was, ask a lot of open-ended questions because they're going to tell you what they think. They're going to tell you the data that they have in their background. And then that's data that they're not going to argue with because it's essentially their data. So as a coach or as even with what I do with copywriting,
Mm-hmm.
I listen to people. You need to tell me what you think. Tell me what your pain points are. Tell me how you would describe this problem. And then I'm going to use those words in my writing, in my marketing. And then what I find is people come back and they say, like, how did you know? I feel like you're
Mm.
speaking to me. And I'm like, you told me what to write. All I did was write it down. Um, but we're so much like that. Even, everybody has trauma. I have a coach
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine who pretty much says, like, you're gonna have trauma, you're gonna have fear. Those are the baggage that we take with us wherever we go.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that you can't put them down. So you're gonna have to take them with you. So why not take them with you? Because you're gonna get on the train and you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have them one way or another. So just acknowledge that you have them because then you can start to deal with them.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That is true. That is true. And how would you see or explain to the audience, like, why it's important to be building relationships in business?
I think business life everywhere, people want to feel seen. They want to
Mhm.
feel seen and they want to know that not just that you see them, but that you see the real them. Especially with moms playing the game of wearing all of these hats.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want to know and you to acknowledge that what they're doing is important. And in business, as much as in life, like you need to build relationships with people. Anybody that's
Mm-hmm.
listening that is an entrepreneur, I would argue hands down that we are living in a time where it's easy to get tons and tons of misinformation. And the easiest way to make your business stand out, honestly, is to take the time to build the relationships with people because you're
Mm-hmm.
building the know, like, and trust. You're built even with, other PTO moms or scout moms, like you're taking the time to actually get to know them in a world where we're being bombarded with messages.
Mm-hmm.
And just by taking that time, you stand out and it becomes memorable.
Mm.
And so I think it's so important, especially as we move forward in our lives where we have digital billboards and Zoom and all the things, and we're getting all the messages all the time. Taking that
Mm.
time to stand out is going to be critical as we move forward with the world.
Right, right. And that's so important because that relationship also stems with the relationship you have with your traumas. And like you proved a good point where the coach that told you, when you do life, when you do business, whatever you do, you're going to take that trauma bag with you until you work through it, until you can
Mm-hmm.
process it and get to the other side. And this is why I have this podcast, because I really want moms to realize that, yes, we all have it, different types of traumas,
Mm-hmm.
but you can get to the other side and have the success of it. And some, I know it could be a little tougher than others, but life continues.
And the other thing that I have kind of learned is that you deal with this trauma, there may be other things that come up from that
Hmm.
or other trauma that's, the first bag is you thought you dealt with the trauma and it turns out that was really the tip of the iceberg and there's a
Yes,
way bigger bag behind it. But, if you don't
I love that.
at least
Hmm.
acknowledge it and start to kind of deal with it, it just continues to snowball. I used to tell people, our experiences with people, it's like we're walking on a beach with a jacket on and we pick up a rock every time
Hmm.
that we have these experiences, good, bad, bad ones are bigger rocks, and we carry them with us and they drag us down. Like it's important from time to time to stop and shake out that jacket with all those rocks and let them fall and then start again, because you'll never get where you want to be if you continue to pick up the rocks and you never actually deal with them.
Yes, yes, yes. And I want to commend you for making the decision, not just for you, but like you mentioned, even
Mm,
for your children, where you said to be deliberate, to decide to not pass it down. And this is a huge thing with the work that I do. I do generational trauma, I do inner child
mm,
healing. So I commend you for you realizing that, because this is how we change the way of the future. And what you said
mm,
earlier was relationships,
mm.
because if we can't have that relationship with ourselves, how are we going to extend that healthy relationship to our children? And how are we going to extend that from the children to their children?
Right.
So, what would you say to the audience about being deliberate and not passing it down? Like, is there a tip? Is there something that, clicked within you that you can share with them?
There's a couple of things that kind of
Okay.
immediately come to mind. One is to be intentional. Be intentional about what you're doing with your kids, what you're doing as you're
Hmm.
building those relationships, but
Hmm.
also realize that you're battling, however old you are, that many years of that
Hmm.
programming. And you're going to have to give yourself grace because you're still going to slip up, you
Hmm.
know. I tend to be a yeller when I lose when it slips, it tends to be a yeller. And so there are still times where I will yell at my kids or whatever. And then when things calm down, I will go back to them and be like, guys, like that's not what I want for us. So,
Mhm,
mom messed up. Do you forgive me? And they always say yes because they're kids, and kids, it doesn't bother them the same way it bothers us as adults.
mhm,
But like realizing it, cool, and then being able to look back at it and do that stop, continue. So like what was happening before I got angry? Like, are there triggers that I can see now
mhm,
looking back on it, so that next time when those things start to happen, maybe I can react differently?
mhm.
And so
Right.
the being intentional, the taking the time to reflect on what you're doing and your past experiences, and then lots and lots of grace.
Yes, right. Because motherhood, even business, life itself, right? And then you commune with, you know, the school teachers, parents. That's a lot for a mother to intake. But one of my points is bringing in the abundance of the
Mhm.
goodness of everything that can come about when, like you mentioned, about balance, when there's balance in the work life, when there's balance at home.
Mhm. And someone recently told me, like, cool, you're still going to have bad days. So, what really helped her, and I have found it to be also very helpful, is okay, we're having a bad day, something bad has happened. Where can I find gratitude in this moment? Even with these
Mm,
bad things
yes.
happening around me, because the more you start looking for gratitude and the more you find things to be thankful for, the more opportunity seems to come knocking. And you find more
Mm,
opportunities to be grateful, more opportunities to have the growth mindset.
mm,
I have learned not to pray to God for any of this, because
mhm.
when I do, I typically get put in situations where I then have to practice the things. So if I pray for more patience, then I
It's
get put in
true.
situations where I have to practice more patience. But if I start being, hey, Lord, I'm grateful, or even I'm grateful in this moment for this
Mm.
for this patience, then it comes in smaller, slightly more manageable doses. So
Yes, and that's a good point, right? Shifting uh the gratitude where you don't have to go through a tough lesson to learn something, but more gratitude
right.
will bring in the blessings, will bring in, like you said, the opportunity. And that's a great
Yeah.
pivot in the mind, right? For the
Hmm.
mom to be able to go into the grace of gratitude. I love that so much. I love it. So would you like to share with the audience how they can find you, meet you? I know I'm going to be putting links in here. So go ahead.
You're fine. You can visit my website at www.harrisvirtualsolutions.com, or if you're on Facebook or Instagram, it's Kelly Harris Marketing. And if you have a business or you just want some support, you are more than welcome to join my Facebook group, Sustainable Sales. There are some membership questions. That's just to keep it a safe community as we build it. I go live every Thursday. Next month, it's all going to be about mindset. And so just things that, hopefully people find helpful. And to the mamas that, you have the trauma and you're trying to be the perfect Pinterest mom and trying to be the mom and make the Hallmark moments, like, it's okay. You've got this. When things get overwhelming, it's okay to take a strategic time out and say, I just need 5 minutes where you lock yourself in a bathroom and so the children don't follow you, and put headphones on and just like, it's okay to have some time to yourself. And you don't have to keep up with anybody, because at the end of the day, your kids think that you're the best thing in the world, and they're going to love anything that you do.
Yes, absolutely. It's true. And having the moms feel that they are enough, and the more that they really get into the state of gratitude of, having a healthy family, being healthy themselves, or whatever you have in front of you, gratitude is really a gift that you can give to your children as well. I love that. All right. So thank you for coming on and sharing about a fixed mindset from parents. I think this is really huge. This is really big, to help moms realize shifting from that fixed mindset and shaking that up and having them become more open to their own mindset.
Yep.
All right. Anything else you want to share before we close?
I think that's it. And, just also, I think for moms, it's easy to feel like you're alone in your feelings and alone in trying to do all of the things, but find somebody that you can talk to, whether it's a group of people or the coach or whatever, because one of the things I have found as my business grows is I keep finding people who are just like me or in the same boat, or maybe they are people who are a little bit, I always tell people there are always going to be people further down the road than you, and there's always going to be people behind you. But here's the thing that as moms, you kind of have to realize as you're bringing up your kids is that you're creating a survival kit. So what you do today becomes somebody's survival roadmap tomorrow. And so if you can find people to connect with, then you're just building the community of support.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, support is big. All right, so you guys know where to find Kelly, and I'll be putting the links where you guys can check out her Facebook group. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.